The early morning light filtered through the frosted windows, casting a soft glow over the room. With a contented sigh, I wrapped myself tighter in the warmth of my favorite blanket, feeling the crackling flames of the fireplace dance before me. Outside, the world was painted in shades of white as snow fell steadily from the heavens, blanketing the landscape in a serene hush. I nestled deeper into the cushions of the armchair, a steaming mug of cocoa cradled between my hands. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of pine from the crackling logs, creating an atmosphere of unparalleled comfort. It was the perfect day to stay indoors, to indulge in the simple pleasures of a cozy home and the company of one's own thoughts. With each flicker of the flames, I found myself drifting into a state of tranquil contemplation. The world outside seemed to fade away as I lost myself in the pages of a well-loved book, the words transporting me to distant lands and forgotten adventures. Time lost its meaning as I surrendered myself to the embrace of the fire, content to let the hours slip by unnoticed. As the morning turned to afternoon, I relished the opportunity to simply be, to exist in a state of quiet solitude away from the chaos of the outside world. The snow continued to fall outside, softening the harsh edges of reality and cocooning me in a world of my own making. And so, as the day stretched on and the fire burned low, I found myself grateful for the simple joys of a cozy day off, for the chance to rest and recharge amidst the gentle embrace of winter's embrace. Little did I know, however, that beyond the warmth of my hearth, a storm was brewing, and with it, a darkness that would soon descend upon my tranquil sanctuary. As the afternoon waned and the daylight began to dim, I reluctantly tore myself away from the comfort of my armchair and wandered over to the window, drawn by the distant murmur of the television. The soft glow of the screen illuminated the room, casting long shadows against the walls as I gazed out at the wintry scene beyond. The news anchor's voice filled the room, solemn and foreboding, as they spoke of the impending storm. High winds and fierce blizzards were predicted to sweep across the region, transforming the tranquil landscape into a battleground of ice and snow. My heart quickened with apprehension as I listened, the warmth of the fire suddenly seeming feeble against the cold reality of the outside world. I watched in silence as images of the approaching storm flashed across the screen, each gust of wind and flurry of snow serving as a grim reminder of the power of nature's wrath. The weatherman's voice was tinged with urgency as he issued warnings to those in the storm's path, urging them to seek shelter and prepare for the worst. A shiver ran down my spine as I turned away from the window, the weight of the impending storm settling like a heavy cloak upon my shoulders. Outside, the snow continued to fall in thick, swirling flakes, each one a harbinger of the chaos to come. As the night descended and the storm outside intensified, I found myself drawn once again to the window, unable to resist the urge to peer out into the swirling darkness. The snow fell in thick, heavy curtains, obscuring the world beyond in a veil of white. Yet, amidst the chaos of the storm, something caught my eye. A shadowy figure moved through the backyard, a dark silhouette against the blanket of snow. My breath caught in my throat as I watched, heart pounding in my chest. Who could be out in such treacherous weather? And what could possibly compel them to venture into the storm's icy embrace? With a sense of mounting unease, I pressed closer to the window, straining to catch a glimpse of the mysterious intruder. As I watched, the figure paused, head turning towards the house as if sensing my gaze upon them. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met across the expanse of snow, sending a chill down my spine. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the figure vanished into the night, swallowed up by the swirling tempest. My heart still racing, I stepped back from the window, hands trembling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Who was the mysterious stranger that had dared to venture into the storm? As the minutes ticked by, I found myself unable to shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. The storm raged on outside, relentless in its fury, but it was not the howling wind or the driving snow that kept me awake that night. It was the memory of the shadowy figure moving through the darkness. It was then that a sharp knock shattered the silence, echoing through the quiet confines of the house like a gunshot. Startled, I jumped to my feet, heart pounding in my chest as I made my way cautiously towards the front door. Who could be out in such a fierce storm, seeking shelter in the dead of night? With trembling hands, I reached for the doorknob, heart racing with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. As I swung the door open, a gust of icy wind swept into the house, carrying with it the swirling snow and bitter chill of the night. And there, standing on the threshold, was the stranger from the backyard. His face was pale and drawn, illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. His clothes were soaked through with melted snow, clinging to his shivering form like a second skin. Yet despite the harshness of the storm outside, there was something about the man's presence that set my nerves on edge. "Please," he pleaded, voice trembling with cold and desperation. "I am sorry to intrude, but I'm lost and I have nowhere else to go. Can I wait out the storm at your place?" I hesitated, torn between the instinct to offer aid to a fellow traveler in need and the nagging sense of unease that tugged at the edges of my mind. But in the end, compassion won out over caution, and I stepped aside to allow the stranger entry into the warmth of my home. As he stepped over the threshold, a chill seemed to settle over the room, the air thick with tension and unspoken fears. I offered him a seat by the fire, casting a wary glance in his direction as he gratefully accepted, hands trembling as he reached out towards the flickering flames. And as I watched the stranger huddled by the fire, his presence casting long shadows against the walls, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. With the stranger now seated by the fire, his trembling form bathed in the flickering glow of the flames, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that settled like a heavy weight upon my shoulders. Despite my efforts to push aside my doubts, a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings of danger, urging me to remain vigilant. As I moved about the room, fetching a warm blanket for the stranger, I couldn't help but cast furtive glances in his direction, searching for any hint of deception or malice in his demeanor. But to my surprise, he seemed genuinely grateful for my hospitality, offering only a feeble smile of thanks as he accepted the offerings. With the stranger now seated by the crackling fireplace, seeking refuge from the biting cold, I ventured into the kitchen to prepare him a cup of steaming coffee. The gentle hum of the kettle filled the air as I busied myself with the task, momentarily distracted from the events unfolding around me. But then, as if summoned by some unseen force, a sound pierced the silence, causing me to freeze in my tracks. It was a subtle noise, barely audible over the crackling of the fire, but it sent a shiver down my spine nonetheless. Slowly, cautiously, I turned to face the source of the disturbance, heart pounding in my chest. And there he was, the stranger, standing in the doorway, a hammer clutched tightly in his trembling hand. His eyes gleamed with an intensity that made my blood run cold, sending a surge of fear coursing through my veins. In that moment, time seemed to stand still as we stared at each other, two strangers locked in a silent battle of wills. But then, as quickly as he had appeared, the stranger recoiled, his expression contorted with fear and desperation. Without a word, he turned and fled, disappearing into the darkness of the night without so much as a backward glance. For a moment, I stood rooted to the spot, stunned by what had just occurred. But then, with trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed the emergency number, my voice shaking as I relayed the details of the encounter to the dispatcher on the other end. As I waited for the police to arrive, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy blanket, the memory of the stranger's chilling gaze lingering in the air long after he had vanished into the night. And as I watched the swirling snow outside, I couldn't help but wonder who was the stranger, and what had driven him to my doorstep on such a fateful night.